Cleveland, actually, so drove all the ways out here today. We're a 24, thank you very much. You're not clapping for the Browns, I understand. We're a 24-person agency in Cleveland, really a full-service marketing agency. When I got started, I started the business out myself. I was a programmer. I actually know how to program PHP, HTML, JavaScript, Python, all of that stuff. So I'm definitely an in-the-trenches user and developer, but really now my job is completely different, and I never code or do any of that stuff. We really provide the full gambit, everything from search optimization, pay-per-click, social media, video, and all that stuff, and it's built around creating that overall marketing strategy. So money can't buy happiness, but poverty can't buy anything. At the end of the day, we're all here to accomplish something, and as much as we want to give our lives to, great causes, our employers, our clients, and all of these other pieces really are pushing us to accomplish certain things, which are driving leads and sales into our business to earn money for those companies that pay us and all of those different things. So that's why we've really got to make sure that as much as we're looking at all these other pieces of WordPress and website development and marketing, that we're really coming back to this initial piece that is how do we go and get results for what we're trying to do. And so that's what I'm really going to be talking about today, is how we look at that big picture to accomplish this. So the marketing funnel, just to give you an idea, we probably all know this for the most part, but we'll set it as a baseline, is that we have a lot of people that go in the top. Typically, we're trying to drive a ton of traffic in through search, social media, pay-per-click, PR, whatever we might be trying to do. As that funnel goes down, we're really engaging them on our site. We're going to have some people pop out. Then we're moving them further into where they're a lead. They're converting by filling out a contact form, making a phone call, any of those pieces. Typically, they get driven into hopefully a CRM system and then through into our sales process to close them. So there is this funnel that people walk through. And it's really about how do we make sure that we get the right people into the funnel, and then how do we stop people from falling out of that funnel as we go through this process. And that's what the really important thing is. Usually on this slide, so I usually put a picture of a fire hose, because today it is very crazy. There are so many different channels. There is social media, and under that, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and 5,000 more. There's email marketing, pay-per-click, social media, mobile advertising, traditional content marketing combined with inbound marketing, then your website, and how do you convert more with A/B testing and multivariate testing, and then into marketing automation and all of these other pieces that go into it. So it can be extremely overwhelming to look at this picture and understand what pieces do we need to have and how do we fit them together to have a great strategy for marketing. Content marketing today is really about creating great content that's articles, videos, infographics, all those pieces. So it fits into your website, but it's kind of a subset of it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I think these are some interesting stats, is that businesses with a written description of their future, so this is a business plan, they developed some written description of how they wanted to move forward, tended to have 30% greater company size, 25% more owner compensation, so the owner made more money, and then 50% faster growth. It's really important to make sure we write this down. The one thing that I tend to see as we work with a lot of businesses, even mid-market and Fortune 500, is they don't have a marketing strategy. They haven't planned anything. They literally just take whatever was the last thing that someone told them in some seminar like this or some meeting or a lunch or dinner they were in, and that's their next thing that they're focusing on with marketing. Or it's the article that came through on their Inc. magazine feed last, and all of a sudden it said something about social media, and holy shit, this company, we've got to drive towards social media. So I think it's really important to understand that it shouldn't be an approach where it's just jumping around and guessing and doing things. You actually have to sit down and create a plan, and if you do that, it's proven to show better success for your business. So we have a process called revenue mapping. And this is where we really take these pieces and start to understand how we develop a solution. And I'm going to walk you through real quickly how this works because it gives you an idea of what the flow of marketing and people should be. So on this outside in the green over here, we have driving prospects. Yeah.
Is that something like when you're whiteboarding a project that you're basically starting with the try prospects, convert leads, and close sales?
Yes, we usually sit down and this is the process that we go through, and we actually have a document that we have that we fill this out for customers to walk them through this process. And I'll explain a little bit more throughout this of how this comes together.
As you go through the process, do you eliminate some of those?
Yes. So driving prospects is obviously the big end of our funnel. Things like search engine optimization, PR and speaking, pay-per-click, direct mail, content, email, and that list actually goes on and on and on with tons of different strategies. It drives into what? Converting leads. That's our website. You know, we typically say microsite and landing page, and that'll become clear why in about 4 slides. But microsite, landing page, we're typically driving a lot of times SEO and PR because when people get our business cards or they see us in a speaking thing, they're going right to the top, that insivia.com. Content, when we create great content marketing and we're distributing via social media and email, it's going into something called a nurture point. So the ebook and the newsletter are what we call nurture points or nurture conversions. Versus down below, this form and this phone number, those are true lead conversion points. They're actually putting a lead into your business where they're filling out that form, they want you to call them back. Or they're calling you. Versus a nurture point where you give them an ebook and they sign up with their email address. They're not ready to buy from you, but they want to be nurtured through the process. So nurture points drive into marketing automation. For those of you that aren't familiar with marketing automation, it's typically your Marketos, Pardot, HubSpot, those pieces. Somebody signs up, puts their email address in, and it sends them emails in a process. So marketing automation is a software suite that's out there that you can buy, marketing automation software. And basically what it does is I sign up for an ebook, my email address go, good.
On your website, somebody signs up for your newsletter.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, and then you would take those names
And so the marketing automation connects into that directly. So that email address that I signed up for goes into a specific list in my marketing automation software. Pardot, Marketo, and HubSpot. And I'll show a couple of those later.
Aweber and Geo.
I'm a little familiar with those, but we use...
Aweber is typically an autoresponder?
It's not necessarily an autoresponder because it does a lot more. So it does initially do auto response. So it'll send a first email, but then what it does is it follows up with more. So let's say I signed up for, I came to WordCamp and there's an ebook about how to create a great WordPress strategy. I sign up with my email. As soon as I sign up, I go into a list and it sends me an email instantly. A week goes by, it's going to send me another email. 2 weeks go by, it's going to send me another email. And the way that it works is depending on what you signed up for, you go into a different trail. So if I signed up about search engine optimization, WordPress strategies, I would go into that list and it would send me only emails associated to search engine optimization. And if I signed up for something else, you would go into a different one. That's a little bit different. That's for email blasts. And we'll get to some of this stuff. I don't want to hold up too long because otherwise we'll get stuck. So the rest, forms and phone calls go into CRM. We go into a sales portal, proposal, and close a deal. So this is really how it works. And then marketing automation, if you see the autoresponder, actually typically it's sending them back here. So they're getting these emails over and over. They're being nurtured. They're being sent more information. Then finally they come back into your funnel on the conversion point and go into sales. So this is what when you start thinking about how you want to drive people from being a visitor into a sale, you should be thinking of this process. This is the map of how you move people through.
So it's marketing automation.
Yes, definitely worth looking into. So I'm going to go through kind of where we start out and talk about things. First thing is always goals. Again, talking about building a marketing plan and looking at what your revenue map is, you have to develop goals. So those could be things like filling out your contact form. There are softwares out there that track whether people make phone calls in, call tracking softwares, definitely using those to understand where people are coming from. And so what do you want to get? How many forms do you want filled out every week? How many calls do you want every week? What's the bounce rate that you want on your website? These are things that we can put down and say, this is the end result that we want at the end of the day. So this is one of the things that I find really important, and I talk about this. I actually have a whole seminar for an hour and a half just on audience. Audience is probably one of the most important things. If you truly understand your audience, develop a persona, that's where you have successful marketing. What understanding your audience is and going deep and not being surface level, all of us probably think we know what our target audience is and what they want, but until you really do the research and sit down and think of it, you don't really understand. And some things that are in this persona typically are, what problems do they face every day? What kind of challenges do they have from upper management, or if they're at a C-level suite, what other challenges are they facing? You know, are they very technological? What's their personality like? What kind of devices? Really understanding your target audience to know what they're feeling, what their thoughts and needs are. And this is going to drive a lot into the future strategies that I talk about. But if you really understand your audience, you can create information and content and messages and use the platforms like the right social media channels and all of that that fits that person. Because if you don't understand it, you're marketing to the wide open group, and that's not going to work. Yeah?
Go back to the audience. How do you actually, what's your approach for it? Just how do you clean up that information and know your audience? What's the typical thing you do to track that information down?
At least in our organization, it can be a combination of things. It's one, interviewing the company to find out from multiple. Well, there's a number of things. So the company that we're working with, we'll interview to find out, you know, what do different people in their organization think about their audience. Then we'll actually do customer surveys where you go out and do a survey. And then there's empirical research where you're going and finding this information that's out there. So targeting, this is, again, one of those extremely important pieces. So the one challenge that I also see people face when they're marketing their business is thinking of it as this overarching, we're going to do marketing. What it should really be is picking a very specific group and then focusing everything you do on that group. In our world for Incivia, we go after manufacturing companies, we go after software as a service businesses, we go after law firms. Each of those have their own separate marketing strategy. It's not we're marketing to everybody, it's manufacturers. And then within manufacturers, we're picking which social media channels do we want to use, what type of content do we want to create, what microsite do we want to build, what marketing automation pieces are used to follow up. And then once we've done that for manufacturing, we move over and do it for attorneys. If we don't do that focus, you're not speaking specifically to your audience, you're going to be too generic and widespread, and you're going to end up missing the mark a lot of times on driving those people. But if you get really targeted and focus in, you're going to end up increasing your results of converting people a ton. So make sure that if you're looking at a marketing plan, don't do it over wide. Look at very specific markets and then repeat that for each of those. So I'm bringing this back up just to remind. So this, when we typically do this, this would be for manufacturers. So that wasn't my overall marketing plan. When I do this revenue mapping, I pick my target, and then I create this for manufacturers. And I say I'm going to have my search engine optimization tips ebook for manufacturers only. I'm going to have my newsletter for manufacturers only, my microsite that's just focused on the solutions we provide for manufacturers, what the past work was that we did for them. In SEO, obviously I'm doing terms, manufacturer marketing. I'm looking at speaking events where I go to manufacturing groups. I'm coming down doing direct mail directly to manufacturers. Then when they get in my automation, if they sign up, they're getting everything that says marketing for manufacturers. And then when they get down to CRM, I know who they are, and I'm presenting a sale and a proposal focused on what type of business that is. So doesn't that make a ton of sense when it's focused on a manufacturer? But if you try and do that at the big picture and say, well, I can work with all types of companies, so I'm going to do all this stuff for them, it gets jumbled and mixed up. How are you going to actually focus and be successful? So you really have to look at that targeting piece. So what I'm going to do now is go a little bit more in depth into each of these to talk about them.
So could you use Facebook in groups, and use that as target? Groups and target?
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about a lot of social media channels is it is easy to target. You know, LinkedIn has specific groups for types of users. Facebook does. Even if you're using search optimization, using the right key phrases for it, pay-per-click can be hyper-targeted. You know, if you're doing Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads, you can go in there and specifically set, I want people with these job types in this industry. I mean, so we live in a world where you can be highly, highly targeted. So why not utilize that? So I'm going to start with that middle column first, converting leads. Why? Because one, we're at WordCamp and we're talking about websites, but also because it's literally that meat part, that middle part that really makes a difference. That's where we turn our general population into leads. That's the conversion point. So when we're trying to look at how we can convert more leads, I look at two different things. Tactical, things that we're tactically doing to make a change to increase the number of people that contact us. And then experiential, you know, that feel that they get from your company and the experience they go through being on your site and seeing your content and that stuff. So tactical, how many people are familiar with A/B testing? Okay, and decent amount. So A/B testing is you have your homepage or your microsite's homepage, and you have version A that maybe the button is at the top of the screen and you have certain message, and version B where the button's to the left of the screen and there's a different message. And as 1,000 people come into that page, it'll send 500 to version A and 500 to version B. And then it will, if you have a contact form on that site, it will track to figure out how many people converted on version A and how many converted on version B. So we can find out in an experiment that maybe our version A converts 29% more times than our version B. So you can test that information, and the nice thing is most of these systems that do A/B testing put a cookie on there so that when they come back to the site, they get the same version every time. So you really do get to understand what things work. And it's amazing. This subject is another one that I do a seminar on that I can talk an hour and a half, that it's amazing the ability. I originally got interested in the subject from an article called The $1 Million Button, which was, there was a e-commerce site, they talked about moving or changing their button from green to red on their site, and it increased sales by $1 million a month. Just because of the way that people looked across the site and the other colors competing on the site, that button stood out and it made an impact on their business. So a lot of that stuff, which leads me in my next one. I have, for that other speech that I do on conversion optimization, I have about 50 of these examples. But I just threw this one up there randomly. These two were done in an A/B test, and it's got a statistical confidence of 95%, which means they did a huge number of people. And there was a 10% decrease in conversion with the bigger button, which is interesting because the style right now is to go bigger. But they did this test, and I have a ton of these A/B test examples, but they found out that that bigger button converted less. So this is the difference, and it just goes to show as you go throughout your site and you're looking at conversion, you can use scientific methods to figure out what works and what doesn't, and it can make a big impact. Imagine increasing the number of orders by 20%, or increasing the number of people that move from your home page to your services page by 50%. That can make it, I mean, if you think about it, it could take a business that's struggling and they fix a couple things to being a business that's flourishing because it's driving the right people. So it's more important than you realize. And then scientific things like bounce rate that matter. When you're looking at conversion, what's the scientific experience that they're going through? Bounce rate is when someone comes to a site and they leave right away. They're bouncing right off. For a site like this, massive bounce rate. Why? Because a great page that someone comes into and converts typically is focused. It's clean, has a great look so people are confident, has easy to find navigation, has one primary message that confirms they're in the right place. All of these different elements that you can do can make sure that that bounce rate can go from a 70-80% down to a 20%. And we've done it, where we can take a site that looks horrible and doesn't have good actions, and it's got a high bounce rate and you're driving everybody away because they don't like it, down to something that pushes everybody forward. So that's the tactical piece and an extremely high level of the tactical piece. Now I'll talk about experiential. So we've really changed from a world where it was mass media and marketing to people. We did advertisements, we told them what to do, to it's now an inbound marketing world where we're providing value for people. We're putting information out there. You know, they're doing the search. They're the ones that are now in charge. We've really taken that from shouting to trying to find a way to draw people in and engage with them. And that's what's changed. And that's an experience thing. And it is on your website. So content marketing, that's the big subject these days. Content marketing, how do we create great content that will drive people in, get us higher in the search engines and all those pieces. This is another thing that I say to clients and everyone else. If you create value for your target audience, you will increase leads. You will 100% do it. Why? Because that's what we're here for, and that's why I go back to that persona, because the only way that you can create value for your target audience is to understand everything about them. So we want to create value by telling a story, teaching them something new, help them solve a problem, and that's one of my favorite ones, is in that persona, figuring out what problems do they deal with every day, and how can I create content that will solve that problem. Show me something I've never seen before, make me laugh, cry, or cheer. You know, these are things, that's that experience, that emotional piece. So if we create value for our target audience, they're going to come to our site and they're going to perceive that we can create value for them beyond just that content. So you create this experience where they get trust with your organization. The reverse side of that is, let's say we create a blog and we're an attorney and we start blogging about our cat. And every time I come to the site, I'm reading about your cat and I'm going, this provides me no value at all. Versus if I came in and through the persona, I know that, you know, I'm targeting tech people as a law firm, and I'm writing articles about how tech companies should avoid being sued because of copyright infringement. What am I going to do? This guy knows about copyright infringement. He just provided me value, and when the problem comes up or I'm concerned about, who am I going to call? But if I'm writing about cats or I'm writing about something else, I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, this guy's useless and I'm never coming back. So that's why we have to create value, and that's why we have to understand personas, because if we don't understand personas, we can't create value. Just can't. So I think so I already talked about that. So don't match the wrong things. You know, if your audience is young teens, you shouldn't be talking about monster trucks. It just doesn't make sense. So this is types of experiences that you provide to visitors. And you've got educate, entertain, inspire, and convince. And then you've got types of content. And so it's not just about creating value for them, but understanding at different levels for what somebody's interested in, what type of content matches. So if I'm looking to educate, it's guides, infographics, trends reports, articles is kind of on that level, ebook. And then if I'm looking to entertain, viral videos, quizzes, competitions, branded videos, games. If I'm looking to inspire, celebrity endorsements, reviews, community forums. If I'm looking to convince, data sheets, calculators, webinars, checklists, case studies. You can see how these each match those different areas. So again, if we go back to our persona, we go back to what our strategy is, if we're looking to educate because we know that works better for our target market, which is something my company tries to do, is that we put out a lot of content that's educational. We know that works for our target audience really well. This is kind of the quadrant that we want to stay in with what we're doing. We stay away from the inspire. People for a web marketing firm don't really, inspiration isn't going to get them to buy. I'm not going to put LeBron James on my, website and all of a sudden people are going to purchase. But if I teach someone in a infographic how pay-per-click works better and how you can get higher results for lower cost, they're going to want to work with me. So understanding this is extremely important as well.
So are you making lists of education, entertainment, inspire, and convince, and then kind of eliminating as you go?
Yeah, so this is kind of that elimination process. We talked about there's a lot of different ways that you can do things within that revenue map that you can, create ebooks, and this is that conversion funnel. This is where they're on your website. So there's a lot of different things that we can create to convert people, but this is the way that we use and say, well, no, we're not going to try and create a ton of stuff. We're just going to focus in on, because we want to educate and maybe we also want to entertain a little bit, articles and ebooks. We can pick two that we want to focus on, and then we don't have to be always thinking in our heads, oh, well, we should do this or we should do this. It's our strategy is we want to be educational and entertain. Then with our persona, we know what value we want to create, what answers, what questions we want to answer. You mix that together, and you've got a strategy. You start creating articles and ebooks solving the problems of your target audience. And that's your strategy, and you stick with it.
Does that also apply to the tools that are on the internet? You're matching that process up with the tools on the internet. For example, a manufacturer may not come to social media.
Correct.
He may
And I'll talk about that in 3 seconds, so let me jump ahead. 3 seconds, literally. So now we're talking about driving prospects. So we talked about converting, and now we're moving to that front of the funnel about driving prospects. So my favorite quote, the best place to hide a dead body is page 2 of Google search results. That is literally true because I think the first result gets 34%, 24%, 18%, and then it drops down to less than 1% by the time you get to the bottom of the first page of Google, and then it's like way under for page 2. What I find most disturbing is we have this quote on our website on this one page, and the amount of people that search and get to our site for the term best place to hide a dead body scares me. I mean, literally scares me. Australia a lot, interestingly enough. But I'm not joking you. It does literally confound me the number of people that search the best place to hide a dead body. So be wary of your fellow man. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it is a high bounce rate because we don't help. It's true. I could turn that into a conversion point with services. That's right. So integrated but strategic, test, measure, and optimize. So there are all these different channels. There is social media. There's email, news and PR, comment marketing, online video, forums, social bookmarking, Q&A sites, podcasting, word of mouth. I mean, list goes on and on of ways that we can reach people and drive them back to us. There's tons. We want to integrate them is one thing, is that you don't want to repeat yourself. If you're creating great content, you can use tools. Someone was talking about Hootsuite, I heard at a table over there earlier. Hootsuite is a great tool for social media. You can put your LinkedIn, Facebook, and all your other channels into it, and then you can schedule posts to go out to all of them at the same time, different tools like that. So you want to integrate, learn how you're doing it. Test, measure, and optimize. So the key is here, we can learn from our personas a little bit what channels will work and don't. We're in the manufacturing world, so our clients are tending to hit engineers. We don't go after Facebook a lot. They ask us. The only reason we go after Facebook is because it's number 2 as an indicator for where you rank in the search engines. So we do it for that, but we don't have a big strategy behind it. But for manufacturers, LinkedIn can be extremely successful in the right methods. So there are some ways that you can determine which channels work and don't based off your persona. But when you can't, the best thing to do is test. That's the nice thing today. You can do pay-per-click in a certain level, test, see what works, and then change it. You can go do LinkedIn advertising. You can go start commenting on forums and doing these different things and see what works. But the thing is you have to have that original strategy of creating value, because if you're not doing that, if you're not creating value and you're testing these things out, you're putting stuff out there that is useless and isn't going to get good results. So you're testing badly, if that makes sense. So I don't have any specific formula. You have to look at these big picture things. Persona, you have to test, you have to see what works, and that's how you come up with. But the thing is once you find the sweet spot, and we do that, we sometimes with customers we'll find, well, okay, these terms with pay-per-click, these terms with search, and this LinkedIn group drive a ton of traffic and the right traffic. You focus. You get in there and you go after it hard.
You set up your content in your plan. In other words, the content for that specific customer, a series of content.
Yeah, and we usually do it over time.
Then you go after these.
Correct.
These tools. Right?
So it's usually starting with that content, that value creation. It's usually on a schedule. So, you know, in quarter 1 we're launching this ebook and this. In quarter 2 we're launching these 2 things, and then all the marketing goes around that stuff. So if we create the search engine optimization ebook, you know, our social media, our LinkedIn, all of that should point to that, and then we've got our our nurture point that goes into everything.
Keep updating the content when you get the results back.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing this all in a perfect world where you have unlimited time or unlimited budget, you know, you're testing on the front. I understand. Trust me, I get it. You're testing on the front end, and then that content, you're seeing how that works, whether it's getting people to sign up, and you're testing different ways of moving things around, you know. But if you can take that time and effort to do it, you can really create an optimized system that's driving a lot of stuff in. And that's what super successful companies do. They're doing all these things. They're testing, they're changing every single day, and then they start gaming the system where they're just, I mean, it literally becomes a money tree where they're just farming things in. I've seen it happen. So I'm going to skip out of this. Doing pretty good on time. So closing sales, I can barely tell what that is. ABC, always be closing. Some people may know that reference, some don't. Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross. Hey, look at that. I like it. So we've now driven targeted prospects into our site. Our site has great nurture points that are driving, that are getting people to sign up for with their email addresses. It's got conversion points where they're filling out our form. We've tested them well. Now we actually have to turn that into a sale. This is our 3rd stage. So how do we close? So I talked about nurture points. The reason that we talk about nurture points is because people don't buy. They don't buy right away. You just can't expect that. You can't expect the first time that you send something out, someone comes to your website and they just purchase. It does happen, but it's pretty rare. And I'm sure most of you have decided to try and buy something. You go look at a site, and then you say, oh, that looks cool. Well, either bookmark it or remember where it was. You go back, you look at the next result, you price check, and eventually, hopefully, you buy. And so there's some interesting statistics. 95% of prospects visiting your website are there to research. I mean, that's pretty big. 70% will eventually buy from you or a competitor. And that's something I always think people should remember is that if they're not buying from you, they're buying from a competitor. So if you're not doing this stuff right, you're feeding your competitor with leads and sales. And then today's prospects are unlikely to buy until the last 1/3 of the purchasing process. So obviously they're going through some effort. 2/3 of the process of actually buying something is that upfront looking and researching piece. So people don't buy right away. They don't fill out contact forms the first time they visit a site. It just doesn't happen. So that's why we look at marketing automation and lead nurturing. That what we're trying to do is we're trying to get those people that aren't ready to buy, the majority of the people come to our site, somehow hooked into us so that we can stay connected with them over time. Does that make sense? So the majority of the people that come to our site are not ready to buy. We have to get their email address somehow, and we have to then have a process for keeping them engaged with our business. That's where automation comes in. So Marketo and Eloqua are the leaders. There's Pardot on here, Silver Pop that kind of fits in that. The ones at the top and to the sides are more on the CRM side, so that's not what I'm talking about here. But the Marketo and Eloqua they're big softwares. I mean, you're talking, Pardot is actually a Salesforce company. I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars a month in license fees. HubSpot's kind of the baby brother of the industry, but it's not cheap itself, which I'm sure some of you know. So marketing automation, let's just repeat how it works. So let's say I have 4 nurture points. One is an SEO ebook, one is a pay-per-click ebook, and the third one is a conversion ebook. I have those 3 on my website. I'm driving traffic to them. If they sign up for the SEO ebook, they go into a special list in my marketing automation software, and they get follow-up emails just talking about SEO. If they sign up for my pay-per-click ebook, they go into a special list, and they get follow-ups about pay-per-click. And the nice thing about marketing automation is you can have it do a lot of things. You can determine when it gets emails, so they get one right away, and then they get one in 2 weeks, and then they get one in a month. Or it could be they get one right away, they get one the next day, they get one the next day, they get one the next day, until you annoy the hell out of them. So you can set up whatever schedule you want. And then you can even tie in other things, like let's say they signed up for my SEO ebook. They come in and they sign up then for my conversion ebook. They can actually, the software will see that the email was already in there. And they could either go into a third list because they're more generic now and they're interested in multiple things, or they could just be moved to the second list. So it's really interesting, complex software that does a lot of things. But what it does is it nurtures that lead. It knows they signed up for something specific, and then it follows up with them automatically without your effort. Now, can you do that on your own? Yes. You can have a sign-up form for an email address on an ebook. You get the email, and you sit there on the first day, and you send them an email, and then you come back and you put it on your schedule to send them an email again. But obviously that's time and effort, and that's why these guys charge $3,000, $10,000 a month to do it for you. Glad you have a question, because I'm actually done. It's tough. To be honest, HubSpot is like your lowest, but they literally start at like I think even $2,000 a month. So they're like your small level, but they provide a lot. HubSpot actually has their own CMS. They have an analytics platform in there. They help you produce content. So they're actually the cheap guy, but they provide a lot of resources. I'm not a big fan because they kind of force you into some things. The other option is using like MailChimp, and that is $35 a month, and it won't automate them, but what you could do is set up templates, and when you get an email address signed up for something, it can go in a list, and then you can force emails to go out, versus one of these which automatically sends them. But at least with something like a MailChimp or Constant Contact, just an email marketing software, you can do it where you still have to take the steps, but at least with MailChimp, you could have the SEO ebook emails go into a specific list, the conversion sign up go into another list, and then you can have templates of emails that you send out. Is it going to require effort and time? 100%.
But at that particular point, you can outsource that.
That is definitely true too.
If it goes.
Virtual assistant or something like that.
Outsource it to that point, and then it's
Yeah.
measurable.
Yeah.
Rather
I
inexpensive.
and I'm not disagree. You know, that's for small business. That's a strategy. But obviously, once you get to a certain level, you just want it automated, and especially because some of these companies that we work with, they'll have 30, 40 nurture points, and then as you go through time, you get more. And if you have somebody even trying to do it manually through virtual assistant, it gets cumbersome.
It's like, also too, depends on the length of your list.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it.
You said MailChimp?
MailChimp, like the chimpanzee.
How about Aweber?
I'm not really familiar with Aweber. Okay. I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
MailChimp is cheaper,
Okay.
but Aweber is more cheaper.
Okay.
In the 2,000 a month range, I talked about, would there be any that you like?
Not at the cheap range, you know. You start getting. Okay. Yeah, we've never. Interestingly enough, we've never tried the WordPress ones because I've seen them out there, but. Okay.
Is it pretty reliable? Is it pretty reliable?
Yeah. So we've got about 1 more minute. I'm happy to answer questions about any topic.
Video, it's really important for video.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a specific piece, but I love video. I think it's it's great for search optimization. It does have tends to have a high conversion rate on it. Video, I mean, if you can do video, it's a great content marketing piece. Yeah, so either you can give me your card or it'll be at insivia.com/seminar, but it won't be there probably until, sometime this week. I should have put it up there earlier or had somebody else do it, but I didn't, so. Or if you give me your card, I'll just make sure I send it to you directly. No, it's not very large, so, yeah. But if you give me a card, I'll just send it to you. It'll be a lot easier. Cool. Well, thank you for your time, and hopefully you got some value out of it. Thank you. Here, I can, yeah.